but I do need you to participate in the class. In a moment, we're going to take roll. When I do the roll, I'll call you by name, verify your registry ID number and designation, and then have you introduce yourself. You will need to stay for the entire webinar in order to earn credit. If you would
turn that
keep your
TV down.
microphones muted when you're not talking, it will help cut down on background noise and interference for everybody else. I know several of you already, but for those of you that don't know me, my name is Tracy Hinton. I ran a family child care program from 1993 until 2018. And I also started doing training and became an educator, contracting with CECPD during that time. After I closed my child care program in 2018, I went to doing like training and stuff full time, as in having my own training business. And then in September of last year, I took a job with the Resource and Referral in North Central Oklahoma as their business consultant. And so tonight webinar is brought to you by North Central Oklahoma Resource and Referral. So we got somebody else coming in, because if I don't have you checked on my roster, then I don't get you entered in the CECPD and you don't get credit. So if I accidentally skipped anybody, speak up now. Looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Okay, I think we're good. Okay, thank you guys. I appreciate you guys doing the introductions because I think it makes it feel more real. I like to keep these interactive to where it's more like a regular class. I do not want to sit here and talk for 2 hours. I want you guys to engage with me. A couple of things. Why do you think I had you start a class about burnout, talking about some funny things that have happened recently or that have happened ever with children? Anybody have any ideas?
So we remember why we love it and why we show up every day.
Great. Yes. So we remember why we're doing. Yes. Anybody else?
So we remember to take the good with the bad.
Yep. Anybody else?
Every day is a new day. And so if we don't look at it and we carry over what's happened the day before, if it was good or bad or whatever, we just have to keep in mind every day is a new day. So we start over the next day, and that helps us not to burn out so hard. And that we just, we're there for a reason, and it's to love children and to help them grow and learn. And so, but life happens in our lives. And so it's just good to be able to talk about it and get new ideas, and help us stay fresh and new. And just remember that we just start over every day. It's a new day. So we don't just carry it over what happened yesterday. We just try to start out a new day.
Okay, thank you. All right, so when you signed up for this class, what were you hoping to learn tonight, or what were you hoping to gain from tonight's class? And you can either unmute yourself and share, or you can type in the chat.
New ideas.
New ways to stop the burnout. Fresh ideas.
Information to share with my coworkers too.
Okay, what else?
Maybe get some different ideas that I haven't tried.
Okay, anybody else?
I think, I mean, I have the same ideas everybody else, to get new ideas and to get a fresh start of, not to do the same old things over and over again, but there's always so many new ideas out there. I think as a collective, when you meet with other people and you get lots of different ideas, if you go with one or two good ideas, then that's worth, the time of
Right.
keeping you fresh and new. And
Okay, Cassandra added in the chat, prevent burnout. Allison said new ideas. Mike and Misty, different ideas that they haven't tried. Cassandra, I'm going to go ahead and apologize now because I've already done it once and called you Cassandra. But I know a Cassandra, so every time I see that, I'm thinking Cassandra in my head, but I'm trying really hard to remember to say Cassandra.
I've been called Cassandra, Cassie. It don't matter. So it's Cassandra.
Well, I do not like to mispronounce people's names, but
Yeah.
like I said, mentally, every time I look at it, I'm thinking Cassandra and I have to like stop myself. So, okay.
That's fine. I can be Cassandra.
All right. So when I'm going to share my screen and put this up, the objectives that I had when I created this class are for you to learn ways to build positive relationships with children and families and maintain a supportive environment, and learn strategies to ensure that communication practices build those positive relationships with children, families, staff, and the community. Because the basis of everything is relationships. And burnout affects your relationships. Even not having good relationships can contribute to burnout. So give me a thumbs up or a yes in the comments if you've ever experienced burnout. I see some thumbs going up. See a couple of heads shaking.
No.
So what is burnout? If someone asked you to define burnout, what would you say?
When you start to question if you should be there anymore, whenever you're no longer happy waking up and doing what you're doing.
And you regret having to go to work.
Yes. Alicia put in the chat a feeling of defeat day after day. Yep.
Just not caring, just doing bare minimum.
Not caring and doing bare minimum. Yes. What else?
Migraine headaches before you go to work.
Migraine headaches before you go to work. Yep. Being in survival mode, feeling sick all the time. Anybody else have anything they want to add? Okay, so Beverly Porter says burnout is a loss of enthusiasm, a surrendering of ambition, a sense of resignation that consumes the spirit and can even lead to physical ailments. Burnout is a stressful process accompanied by declining performance, people problems, feelings of meaninglessness, negative emotions, frequent illness, and a propensity to engage in substance abuse. According to one study by the Center for Child Care Workforce, and I will tell you this is a few years old, 30 to 40% of childcare providers drift out of the profession each year. So what do you guys think of that statistic? Do you think it's still accurate? Do you think it might be higher now, lower?
I think it's definitely higher.
I think it's higher.
Fair.
And so oh, sorry, go ahead.
I said, I know it has to be higher. People are leaving the profession, and it's just the behavior issues are so prominent, and after a while you get tired. But staying in focus and getting new ideas helps prevent that. But It's a
It
lot to
does.
take in a lot of times.
Yep. So if relationships are one of the most important things in what we do, and we also know that attachment relationships are very important for young children, how do you think a high turnover in this profession affects the children and the families? Oh, Allison, that's true. More behavior issues with no support. Yep.
I think more tantrums too, because they're going from teacher to teacher, and I think it's hard for them to adjust.
Yep.
A lot of the kids get attached to one of the teachers or the other, and when the one teacher leaves, it breaks that bond, and then they're afraid to get close to anybody else,
Yep.
and parents as well.
Mm-hmm.
Children and families both need consistency in their day. And
Yep.
if they're not getting that, then that's when they start acting up too. The routines are disrupted.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yep. So what does burnout look like? We become detached from ourselves and others. We become zombies who go through the motions, and our hearts and minds are no longer in our work. We're out of tune. It affects us emotionally. We drift without focus or direction. We might be filled with an all-consuming emptiness or anxiety, and we neglect family, friends, coworkers, and the children in our care. It can affect us physically: sore backs, necks, and knees, headaches, tight chest, upset stomach, lack of energy. Does any of that sound familiar to anybody?
Some days, yes.
Yeah. I mean, the sore back, necks, and knees, I'm like, isn't that like part of the job? I mean, that was just kind of how I felt every day, like my back would hurt.
Oh, the harder it is to get up and off the floor.
Yes. Yeah. I'm always like, getting down there is no problem. It's getting
Exactly.
up that's the
Exactly.
problem. Yeah. I mean, I can fall down just like that.
Yep.
So we have choices. We can leave the profession entirely, which many people choose to do. You can make superficial changes, such as changing from job to job to job. Or you can start to make subtle and mindful changes that lead you in a new direction. And who can make changes for you?
No one.
You have to
Except for
You have to make it for yourself.
except for yourself. You're the only one who can make changes for yourself. No one can make those decisions for you. You have to be the one to decide to do it. So the first question, if you printed the handout, the first question in the handout is to spend a few minutes thinking about if you see any signs of burnout in yourself. If so, what are they? And just write some thoughts down. So I'm going to give you a minute to work on that. If you did not print out the handout, you can just write notes on a piece of paper. And this is private. You're not going to share with us or anybody. So please be honest with yourself. And if you guys would remute your mics after you talk, I would really appreciate it. Okay, about one more minute to think, and then we're going to go on. So here's the thing. This is not a one size fits all equation. You have to look inside yourself and decide where you're at and where you want to go. You can't fix all of your problems in a 2-hour class. I'm hoping I can give you some resources to look inward, and some tools you can use to see what you need to do to help yourself move forward and out of burnout if you're burned out right now, or tools for the future to help keep you from burnout. Burnout happens to everybody at one point or another, usually in their life. It's especially, though, I think for those of us that are in caring professions, it can hit us especially hard. And so, because it can be exhausting constantly being a caregiver for somebody else. So let's think about this. Get a piece of paper and put a line down the middle. Give me a thumbs up when you're ready. Oh, Amy shared in the chat, she had those feelings. She was at a daycare for 21 years and then switched to a new job at an early head start. It's different, but she's much happier. Thank you for sharing that, Amy. All right, so are you guys ready? Give me a thumbs up or yes in the chat. Okay, so on one side of the paper, doesn't matter which, I want you to spend a few minutes writing down all of the things you have done for other people in the last week. That's everybody. Children, family members, friends, anything you've done for other people in the last week. Any questions before we start? Okay, go. Okay, about sorry, about 1 more minute. Okay, now on the other side of the paper, I want you to write down everything you have done for yourself in the last week. Everything you've done for yourself in the last week. Okay, about 1 more minute on this one. All right, so now let's share. What are some of the things you did for other people in the last week?
Take children to practice, fold clothes, wash clothes, clean rooms, clean bathrooms, cook dinner.
Thank you. Who else wants to share?
I had a friend, her husband passed away. So I took flowers, card, food to him, and just spent time with him, kind of comfort her.
That was kind.
I watched my grandbabies the weekend and of this weekend, and I cooked for my family and my for Father's Day. Played some games with the children at school. I did laundry. I cleaned the house. I made. I don't know. I did a lot of stuff. Can't remember all of it, but was busy.
Alicia shared in the chat that she helped coworkers on with computer work, and Amy said she watched her nephews for her sister. Anybody else want to share what they did for other people in the last week?
How about kept kids overnight?
Kept kids overnight.
Loaned money?
Do what?
Loaned money?
Oh, loaned money. Okay.
I had a coworker that was out sick, so I checked on her. And then we had a teacher absent, so I came in early and got her rooms all ready for her and stuff to help her out to get started with a good day.
Nice. Jessica said she helped with lunch for a family funeral and watched nieces and nephews. Anybody else want to share what they've done for others in the last week? What about what you've done for yourself? What have you done for yourself in the last week?
Very little.
Very little.
I took
Daughter,
We went camping.
You went camping. Fun.
Oh, Tommy,
Well, to some
camping.
people. I mean, to me, that sounds like a lot of work, but some people really enjoy it. Oh, Allison said she got a pedicure. Alicia said she took a nap. Naps are my favorite.
I got a pedicure and a manicure. Got bought myself a new dress, and I went swimming and took a nap. And
Nice. Oh, Amy bought herself a new purse.
I played with my dogs.
Played with your dogs. So which did you find easier? Filling out the side of things you did for others or things you did for yourself?
For others.
It's because you're caregivers, and so you tend to give a lot more care than you give others, to a lot more care than you give yourself. But if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to have the internal resources to take care of others. So it's very important that you find ways to take care of yourself. And we're going to talk about some as we go on through the class. Right now, let's talk about blessings. What are some of the blessings of working in this field?
So many.
Getting to watch the kids learn and grow.
Yep.
I think for me, working in the church atmosphere is just lead them in the right direction of Jesus, because I incorporated all that into my room and stuff, and
Right.
get them on the right path.
Just building good
Developing-
relationships with our families is one of the great things. You build a lifetime of friendships with a lot of our friends, and the kids never forget you. They're always, you can be a famous person wherever you're at, because you hear your name being Miss Wava or whatever. It's really,
Right.
it's just, you never forget those relationships, and those, especially when you have built a close relationship. And it's always hard to see them move on to other schools whenever they get, age out of you. And, but just in the relationship you build with your coworkers, and I have a great staff, so it's just, it's great. I mean, you just, build lots of, but relationships are important. So that's where it all begins. But watching the kids grow and learn and explore and be excited about coming to school is a blessing.
Okay, back on the things we did for ourselves. Christy mentioned that she read a few pages of a book, and Cassandra mentioned that she worked out and ate right. Alicia said the acknowledgement of the multitude of different jobs we do every day with the children, and when the parents see how hard we work. Those are both blessings. What are some of the other blessings? Anything else anybody wants to add?
Just knowing that we make a difference in the children's life.
Yep, that's great that we make a difference in the children's life.
Right.
What about the stressors? What are some of the stressors?
Children crying all day, spoiled babies.
Having to get end of the month paperwork done.
End of the month paperwork, yeah.
Yeah.
Being short-staffed
Yes.
and having to stretch yourself so thin right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yep. I think sometimes too, getting pulled to another room that you haven't been in because you're shorthanded, that kind of stresses you out too a little bit. Because the routines are always different, and
Right. And it's stressful for you and the children.
absolutely.
School kids are out for the summer.
Yeah.
The children, and in the last year and a half after the pandemic, their behaviors is just, I've just not seen anything like it ever in all the years I've done this, and it makes it difficult, especially when they're violent at 2.
Yeah.
Yep.
Helping them learn social skills so that they can get along in the group too is stressful.
Okay, so if you printed the handout, there's space on the handout, or you can just make your own list. But I want you to write down some of your blessings, some of the things you see as blessings from working in this field.
5 or 6 different times.
Make your own list of things that you see as a blessing. And I'll give you a minute or so to work on that. So here's what I would like to encourage you to do. Make yourself a blessings box or a notebook, whatever works for you. Could be a 3-ring binder, could be a spiral notebook. Mine was, well, is, because I still have it, just like a shoebox that I threw stuff in. One of the most probably treasured things in there was a heart with I love you, Miss Tracy, written on it, that a 6-year-old had traced and cut out and colored red and wrote, on there, I love you, Miss Tracy. Cards from parents, things that remind you of all of the reasons that you do this and the
You climb
reasons
that way,
you
she's-
love doing this. It's something you can look back on or look on when you're feeling overwhelmed. Funny stories that have happened with the kids, you can write down and put in a box, or in a notebook, some way to remember them to make you laugh later. Because if your focus is constantly on the stress rather than the blessings, how is that going to affect your outlook?
It's going to make you be negative.
I think the children can sense it too.
Mm-hmm.
When you're upset.
Yep. And so if you're focusing on blessings and rewards, that's what you're going to see. If your focus is constantly on the negative aspects of your day, that's what you're going to see. Does that mean that negative things aren't going to happen? No. Of course they are. But just be very careful about not letting like a 5-minute situation ruin an 8 or 10 or 12-hour day, however long many hours you end up working in a day. And that's a conscious effort on your part, to remind yourself of that and say, okay, that happened, but it happened, and now we're going to move forward. So what does caring for yourself look like to you? How do you take care of yourself? What are some of the things you do to take care of yourself?
I work out and I try to go to bed early and
work out, get plenty of sleep. Those are both very important. What else?
I try to be with my family a lot too, because that helps.
Take a vacation.
Yes. Cassandra said get 8 hours of sleep. Yep. Allison said eat healthy, go to the gym, and get plenty of sleep.
I sit in my car when I get home from work and just kind of let the day fizzle out. And I'm like, what's work is work, what's home is home. I'm just going to breathe for a minute.
Okay, great. What about stress? How do you deal with stress? And we're going to talk about stress in 2 different ways. I think there's overall dealing with stress, like in your overall life, which includes getting plenty of sleep, exercising, eating right, but also like those in the moments. How are you going to handle it when it happens? Allison said, breathe. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Take a minute to respond to what has happened, or talk or ask for help in that particular situation.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say the same thing. Step away from the situation for a moment and regain, and just take a breathe and smell your flower and blow your candle for a few minutes.
Right.
And then,
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
sniff your flower and blow out your candle. Yep.
Be sure to respond, not react.
Oh, I like that. Respond, not react. Yes. And remember, there's more than one side to every story.
Right.
And you're only seeing it from your side.
Right.
Something I am constantly trying to remind myself of is you have no idea what anybody else is going through,
Absolutely.
ever.
So be
You
kind.
see this, and there's all this. I try to get my hand up there where you can see it. But I mean, you see what's up here, and there's a whole lot underneath.
Right. And I try not to stress about anything I cannot change, because there's some things you just can't change.
Mm-hmm. And yes, I have to have that talk with myself quite frequently.
Yes.
I have absolutely no control over this,
right,
except for how I react to it.
Right.
Oh, in the chat, bathroom timeout and count. Yes. I used to, that was sometimes what I needed to do, is go in the bathroom and take a breath.
Right.
So we've mentioned taking deep breaths. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And there's also like a part of your handout has like some deep breathing exercises. Never underestimate the power of some deep breaths, because they really, really help you. I kind of equate it to what my grandma used to tell me, which was count to 10 before I got mad.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of the same principle. It helps level you out and calm you down. And you can also teach children to do that. So as we go through some of these, there's space if you have the handout to write down some ideas, if you get some new ideas, or your favorite ideas. What I suggest, especially if you are having a lot of stress right now, write down some ideas like on an index card or a sticky note. And I'm talking about like those things you can do in the moment, and stick them in your pocket. So when you're feeling stressed, you can be like, okay, I'm going to take some deep breaths. And I also used to like talk myself through it in front of the kids. Like if I was feeling overwhelmed, I would sit down and say, I am very overwhelmed. I'm going to sit down for a minute and take some deep breaths until I feel better. Which worked for me because I was taking deep breaths, but also modeled for them that I get frustrated and stressed out and overwhelmed too. And it's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Children get stressed out and burned out too. There's typically about 3 levels of stress. There's positive stress, which is of short duration and mild. If it's a child, well, I think even if you're an adult, a responsive person helps buffer that situation. So like if a child gets a vaccine and they're crying, what do we do to help them?
We cuddle.
Yeah, we comfort them, we cuddle them, we pat them. If they get startled by a loud noise.
Same.
If, something happens that stresses you out and someone helps you and says, hey, I'm here, that helps you buffer that. Positive stress helps children learn how to deal with difficult situations. So how you model for them and what you do for them in those stressful situations is going to teach them how to deal with it when they're an adult. There's the next higher level of stress, tolerable stress. And those are bigger life events like death in the family, illness, divorce, even natural disasters. The stress response lasts longer, but the long-term effect can be taken care of or helped if there's an adult to help the child through the experience. So we've all read stories of children who just had absolutely horrific childhoods, but one teacher or one person that cared for them got them through that. And you might be that person for that child. And then toxic stress is when our body, when we're stressed out, our body secretes cortisol and adrenaline. These are helpful and they help us when in survival, but when they stay high for an extended period of time, they can become toxic. Those neural connections become reinforced through constant use. They become the predominant pathway through which the brain assesses situations. So for a child who is in toxic stress, everything is a threat. Everything. And so, sorry, I need a drink. This might be the child who comes in and everything's going hunky-dory and they create chaos because chaos is what's comfortable to them. And so that's why it's so important to work with them on dealing with stress. And I think that we have all been under incredible amounts of stress the last 2.5 years since the whole stinking COVID thing started. And everybody feels it. Doesn't matter the age, we all feel it in one way or another. If you have some children that you feel like are in toxic stress and having toxic stress at home or in their life, look into taking some classes on working with children who've been through trauma. Because that will help you more than anything. So what are some ways that you relieve stress in your own life and help children manage their stress? Does anybody have anything they want to share? Oh, and Amy said in the chat, she has to remind herself of that. I think this is when I was talking about we don't know what other people are going through. When one of her kiddos is having a moment, she works with families that are homeless and you don't know what the kids are going through. Nah, for sure. Does anybody have anything on stress relief they want to share or add to what we've already talked about? Okay, here's some ideas. Meditation. And we're going to do kind of a practice one in just a minute. Visualization, which, I mean, there's all kinds of different ways to do that, but it can be, visualization can be like you listen to a recorded message and you envision it. There are pre-recorded different, there's a lot of different meditation apps out there. Some are free, some are free, or you can get a subscription service. So you just kind of have to look and find what works for you. Progressive relaxation is basically like starting with your toes and your feet, scrunch them up and then relax them and then work your way up your body. If you like to write, journaling, and it can be, you know, in a notebook, it can be on your computer, whatever works for you. Regular exercise, yoga. I have balance issues. So the yoga I use is called Yoga for the Rest of Us with Peggy Cappy, and she uses a chair for balance in it. And I really like it because it helps. I'm not afraid of falling. On the meditation. there's like part of the handout talks about meditation. There's, I mean, the whole gamut of meditation. Okay. So, but what I suggest is, and what one of the ones in your handout talks about, is just like a focused meditation on either one word or a phrase. It can be even be a color or a scene you like your favorite spot. Like if your favorite spot is on the beach, or your favorite spot is in the mountains, or in a chair reading a book, and just focus your mind on that. And when your mind wanders, not if, when, you just gently pull it back to your focus. The trick to this is, like, you want to pick things that are peaceful and calming. So like if you have a test coming up, you don't want your focus word to be test. You want it to be something positive. Because if you're focusing and you're thinking test, 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 what do you think your anxiety level is going to do? It's going to go up here. So what I would like you to do now is pick a focus word or phrase or color, whatever works for you, place. I also like to do like a Bible verse. Excuse me. But whatever you want to do, and I want you to, I'm going to start it, or I'm going to set a timer, and I'm going to have you do it for a little bit, and then we'll talk about, see how you feel when you get done. So does everyone have something in mind to put their focus on? Okay. Go. Okay. So how long do you guys think that was? Anybody?
2 minutes.
What?
2 minutes.
2 minutes? Okay.
5 minutes.
3
5
minutes.
minutes. It was about 2 minutes. Did it feel like longer? The handout suggests doing it for like 10 to 20 minutes. I personally suggest starting out with 2 to 3 minutes and adding to it if it works for you and you like it. I think that it can, we don't often spend very much time just being with ourselves for a couple of minutes. And I think that this can help center you and help like your stress level if you can find a way to do this in the morning, maybe in the evening. I sometimes get people saying, well, I would go to sleep if I did that. Then I'm like, well, great. Then do it when you're going to sleep. If you know, find it, but not everybody likes meditation. Not everybody, it doesn't work for everybody. Find what works for you. When helping children deal with stress, again, telling them and teaching them about deep breaths, practicing with them during other times, like practicing with them during your circle time, practicing with them throughout the day. Notice their feelings and help them put words to their feelings. And then listen. And that's both paying attention to verbal and nonverbal cues. Do you ever ask somebody if they're okay and they're like, I'm fine? Are they really fine? Their body language is telling you they're not. So, like I said earlier, never underestimate the power of a few deep breaths, and teach your children to take deep breaths as well. And they will internalize that, and they'll even use it to help each other. I will never forget the last year I did childcare. I only had 2 kids that year because I was phasing out. And was one little boy and one little girl. And the little girl, how can I put this tactfully? She could be a little high strung. And when she would get upset or frustrated, she would like squeal or scream. And the little boy would go up to her and he would say, do you want to do some belly breathing with me? Or do you want to do the pretzel with me or the balloon with me or something? And he would help her calm down. Now, what a valuable life skill for both of them to have that. And we're not going to do this right now, but it is in your handout, the deep breathing exercises. So again, and we've kind of already covered this, but think about both dealing with your overall stress and dealing with stress in the moment. So on your somewhere like on a piece of paper or something, I want you to make a list of some stress busters that you can call on in the moment. And when I do this class live, this is like a group activity, but it's kind of hard to do that in a webinar. So I'm just going to give you a couple of minutes to write down some. And then if anybody has any they want to share, we'll share. Okay, does anybody have any stress busters they want to share with the large group?
Well, one thing I like to do in the classroom is when we're having a stressful day and the kids are getting stressed, I turn music on. We just have a dance party. We just get out and dance and stuff. And it kind of helps everybody relax.
It does, yes. Anybody else? Anybody else?
We play Simon Says.
Like Simon Says, that's a great one. Yeah.
I use the little emotional baby dolls for some of mine that get really upset or frustrated, and we look at them and look at our face in the mirror, and we'll just talk about our emotions and stuff, and that always seems to calm her down, especially one little girl.
Going outside.
Yes. Fresh air can help with everything, especially if the fresh air is not 120 degrees, but
Sometimes just changing the activities, and when we're real stressed, just remind them, let's stop and smell our flower and blow our candle and do that a few times, and then we're more relaxed. But just changing the environment or changing activities can help a lot.
Yep. Cassandra said in the chat to exercise with the children. And there's a lot of great kids exercise videos on YouTube. Jack Hartman has a bunch. The Learning Station, Go Noodle. I've used Learning Station and Jack Hartman. I've never used Go Noodle, but I've heard a lot of people talk about it. And even if you don't use like YouTube in your environment, you can go there and look for ideas to bring in and do with your kids. So, oh, Allison said she loves Go Noodle. It's very important that you know what your buttons are. What are the things that get under your skin? And we all have different buttons. Some people, whining may be a button. Other people, Jessica put in the chat screaming. Alicia put the word no. So you need to know what your buttons are, and you need to know how to deal with them when they get pushed. Because there are children who, if they figure out what their button is, what your button is, they will push it just to get a reaction. And I say that because my granddaughter is one of those children. Let's see. Christy said hitting and throwing toys. Cassandra said when the children tell each other, don't look at me. Yeah. So you need to think about your own buttons and figure out how you're going to deal with it. What's going to be your response? Because, I mean, is a child saying no? Is that pretty typically developmentally, pretty appropriate developmentally?
Yes.
And so if your button gets pushed every time they say no, and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it didn't push my buttons, because it did. You've got to find a way to work through that. Screaming, same thing, you know. You've got to find a way to work through that. So what are some ideas for working through some of these buttons?
I think like for kids that are screaming and not using their words, is just helping them to find their words, giving them ideas of what they can do instead of screaming, and kind of change the mindset a little bit of it. Because sometimes that's all they know what to do, is they just scream, right, because they don't know what else to do. But helping them to find the words that they need.
Yeah, Alicia put in the chat, she said she figured out when they say no, ask what they do want instead of what they don't want.
Exactly. And I like to redirect to kids too. If they're screaming and crying, give them something else to do, kind of redirect them sometime. If I that helps too.
And remember, they're allowed to have feelings. You know, I always say feelings are just feelings. It's what you do with them that matters. It's okay to be angry. It's not okay to punch your friend when you're angry. It's okay to be sad. It's not okay to kick somebody when you're sad. It's okay to be frustrated. It's not necessarily okay to scream at the top of your lungs when you're frustrated. Also on the saying no, like depending on what it is, giving them two positive choices that you're okay with. So like for me, if I would, when we were going outside, I always wanted the children to go to the bathroom before we went outside, so I didn't have to bring everybody back in. And most of the time I'd be like, you know, hey, we're getting ready to go outside, go take your turn in the bathroom. They'd be like, okay, and they'd go. But inevitably I'd always have one or two that'd be like, no. And so with them, I learned to say, hey, do you want to go to the bathroom hopping like a frog or flying like a bird? And let them choose between those. And most of the time that worked really well. The trick is with that, you have to make sure it's two things you're okay with. So it can't be, do you want to pick up or do you want to go to timeout? Because if they don't want to pick up, guess what? They're going to want to go sit down.
Right.
So instead it would be like, would you like to pick up the blocks or the baby dolls? Would you like to pick up the toy dishes or the markers or whatever? So giving them choices and keeping a very straight, calm face, which I know can be a challenge. But just think about your buttons when they get pushed and how you can calmly deal with them. I mentioned my granddaughter when she was in, I think it was kindergarten. Her teacher was texting my daughter every single day about every little thing Zoe did. And I mean, I'm not saying that, you know, a teacher shouldn't make a parent aware when a child is misbehaving, but these were piddly little things that she should have been dealing with in the classroom. And I told my daughter, I said, Zoe has figured out what pushes her buttons and she is pushing them quite happily. And, you know, you've just got to work on letting those things go. And working through them. And it doesn't mean you're not dealing with the behavior, but it means that you're working on how you deal with it so that you're not getting upset and frustrated every single time. All right, so let's talk about who does burnout affect in your life?
Everyone around you.
Your family, your coworkers.
Your family, your children.
Yep.
Anybody you come in
Everybody.
contact with.
Anybody you come in contact with, yes. I'll never forget one of the times I did this class live. One of the first times I did it live. We had divided into groups and I'd given them chart paper and they were like writing down people that were affected by burnout. And I don't know what had happened with the UPS guy that week, but they wrote UPS guy on their list. So, I mean, something had happened with, maybe he rang the doorbell during nap time. I don't know, but you know, everybody around you is affected by it. So Mimi Brodsky Chinfield describes the time that we are engaged with children as sacred interactions. Blessed, holy, spiritual, divine, deep, meaningful, profound, important, celestial, significant interactions. Isn't that a beautiful way to think about the way we spend our day? So again, there's room on the handout, or you can just write on a piece of paper. And this is going to be private, so you be honest with yourself. But think about, are you letting stress and burnout interfere with sacred interactions? And I'll give you just a minute to work on that. Okay, so what if you try to move past burnout and can't seem to get past it? What do you do then?
You just keep trying. A couple years ago, I was in major burnout, and it lasted like 2 months.
Mhm.
And it was horrible. And anything and everything I tried to do, I couldn't get over it. And finally one day something clicked, and I've done good ever since then. Maybe I hit that 10-year, I don't know, but yeah, it's really rough for a good 2 months.
Mhm.
And we just kept going on. And I would tell the kids, I know, guys, I know Misty's grumpy. I know, I'm sorry. I just need hugs and help. And yeah. And so, we got through it. Parents got through it with me. And yeah, but you just got to keep going and trying to stay positive.
Thank you, Misty. So the children deserve the very best of you.
Right. I think you got to remember why you're working there to start with.
Mm-hmm.
You're there to serve a purpose. And
yep. And listed in the handout is a really good book called Finding Your Smile Again by Jeff A. Johnson. Jeff was a center director, and his wife was his assistant director for several years. And his wife was getting burned out and telling him that for several months, but he wasn't listening to her. And then he burned out, like in what he called a blaze of glory, and just quit his job one afternoon. And they ended up opening a family childcare home, and now they like travel and do speaking and stuff. But the book is very good if you like to read. It also has like steps you can work through and things. And there's another newer book by somebody, but I haven't read it yet. And darned if I can think of the name of it right now. If I think of it, I'll email it out to you guys. But, burnout is now being recognized as a, as a serious issue. I think it's a good thing. I think mental health itself is being recognized more and more every day. But, you know, if you enjoy books, you enjoy reading, look up that book, see if you can get a copy of it. You know, look for resources on dealing with stress and dealing with burnout, because there are more and more. So here's one more thing to talk about. So your environment affects your attitude, and your attitude affects your environment. The strongest emotion rules the room. So you could be bebopping along just fine one day, and you hear little Johnny coming up the walk screaming at the top of his lungs. Now, how does that affect you? Or not just you, how does that affect your home, if you're a home, or your classroom, if you're a center? How does that affect when he comes in? Does it affect the climate of the room?
Sure.
So, you know, you don't know what's going on. He or she may have every right, or does have every right, to feel that way, but you've got to be careful not to let it affect you, and to help them work through it. I always like to ask, what could, now if you're a center, or if you're in a home and you're working with parents even, what could people do to help you with burnout? If you're a director, what could your employees do that would help you make your days easier? If you're a teacher, what could your director do to make things go easier for you?
I just think some encouragement. I mean, just encouraging that you're doing a good job, and just to help you.
Stay positive.
You got to stay positive. And so
appreciation. And it doesn't even have to be a big one. It could be like, you know, thanks for saying hi to me this morning. I really needed it, or, you know, or just something small. That way we know that we are appreciated, because I know that parents do, but sometimes we forget. And then, you know, we get in that rut of doing, and maybe you feel like you're being taken advantage of, or you're just not appreciated, and, you know, you're doing all this stuff for their children, and, you know, just a thanks every now and then would help.
Yes, thank you, and sincere appreciation goes a long way.
I know my director here, a lot of mornings we'll walk in and she just has a little note that says, thank you for all your work, and has a couple of pieces of chocolate on it. And it just makes your day to know that she's thinking of you and appreciating.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And that's something simple.
Something very simple. Yeah.
Cassandra put in the chat, positive feedback. Yes. I always like to tell employees, or, you know, teachers, you are responsible for keeping up with your own training. You know, your director should not have to keep track of your training. You know, you have a certain amount of hours you need every year, and you need to keep in mind and work towards getting that. I'll tell you guys a pet peeve of mine. I had a lady who has signed up for several of my webinars and not shown up to a single one of them, email me and say, I've got to have 2 hours. Can you get me into the webinar tonight? And I was like, no, I'm sorry. Now it's full. It's got a long waiting list. And I mean, honestly, I'm thinking if you'd shown up for one of the other, 6 that you signed up for and didn't show up for.
Right, right.
So, I mean, I was just like, I was, very professional in my response, but I was thinking, that your emergency, your lack of planning is not my emergency. And and just a little tidbit, like if your professional development ladder or your registry expires like in December, better make sure you have all your hours by October or November, because once you get into the holidays, it's hard to find training. And training also helps with burnout, because it's good to interact with other people, realize you're not alone, learn new things. So I think it's really important to get training. Okay.
And also with sorry.
Go ahead.
With the training, you also find people that have those same buttons that you have, and they sometimes they can give you ideas on how they beat their button being pushed that can help you. Also, I love going to trainings. That does help a lot.
Me too. I still love I still love training. Some of the things you guys wanted from the class were some new ways to stop burnout. Do you feel like you got some new ideas tonight?
Yes.
Some info to share with coworkers.
Yes.
Some different ideas and ways to prevent burnout. Do you feel like you got some ideas to prevent burnout?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. My objectives were for you to learn ways to build positive relationships with children and families and maintain your supportive learning environment, and learn strategies to ensure communication practices build those positive relationships with children, family, and the community. Do you feel like we met those objectives?
Yes.
Yes.
So as we wrap up tonight, I hope you'll look back over this material and spend some time thinking about what we talked about. Look at some books, do some research, take some deep breaths, take some time for yourself. And remember that time for yourself, it doesn't have to be it can be 5 minutes in the morning. Find ways to take time for yourself. Because if you want to move past the burnout, you have to do the work. Nobody can do it for you. Children are worth it, and you are worth it. Allison, yes, I will send you a copy of the PowerPoint. Whoops. I'm writing myself a note. If you don't get it from me by Wednesday, please feel free to remind me. I'll probably just send it out to everybody, and if you don't want it, you can just delete it.
Great. Can you let us know when you're doing more presentations too?
I post them. They're on the Oklahoma registry, and then I also send them out to people in the North Central region first, so they get first chance at it before it goes public on the registry. Because once it goes public on the registry, it fills up fast.
Right, right.
I have 2 in July, but they're both already full.
Okay.
So as it'll probably be August. Well, and you could always ask to be put on the waiting list, because if somebody cancels, I will let people on the waiting list in. Like Allison and Cassandra both got in off the waiting list tonight. So
okay, perfect.
Okay, so this is the wrap-up question. I would like you to spend a couple of minutes thinking about that, and then what your plans are for beating burnout, and then I'll give you a chance to share, and then we will tie everything up. Okay, who would like to share their response first?
Well, for me, I think one of the main things is to stay positive. The children's behaviors and stuff are not going to last forever. Things will change, things will get better. You just got to stay positive and hang in there.
Well said. Who's next?
I think husbands should take their wives out for something good to eat, not just Sonic, but like a good meal, maybe to the movies, buy them some jewelry, stuff like that. That would help with mine a lot.
I like how you think, Misty.
Yep.
I'm going to get more exercise, get more rest, eat good. Eat right. Try to stay healthy, and take a good vacation to the beach.
I said taking more vacation and staying positive.
Okay.
Just remembering that children are learning their feelings and emotions, and all of that comes out now and then. And the more that we can support them, it's a learning process for them. And we are, there to help them and really kind of think about what we're really supposed to be doing, even though you get a little bit irritated now and then.
I like the idea of like the keepsake box for all the positives and things just to go back and look at. So when it does get stressed, I can go back, just remind myself, this is why I do this.
Mm-hmm. If you're crafty, you can decorate a box. I'm not crafty, so mine's just an old shoebox. Who else hasn't shared?
I think just making sure that the negative that's in the environment, like maybe say, hey, I don't know if you realize, but what can we do to help yours? Because I know at work that helps with mine when people are not so, oh, I don't want to be here. Oh, it's been such a rough day. Oh, well, what happened good today? Like I want to focus more on the positive.
Right. Well, and saying those things like, oh, it's been such a rough day, or, oh, I can't handle this, and all of that just increases your stress response. So yes, you're turning it around and looking for positive is a great idea. All right, who hasn't gone yet?
I just need to take time for myself and find more balance. I'm very fortunate. I have not felt burnout from school this year. I have really enjoyed this school year, but I have several jobs, and trying to figure out how to juggle all the jobs and my family and do things for myself is hard. So trying to find balance.
Yep. All right, who hasn't gone? And you can use the chat if you prefer.
My thing is finding time for myself. It's hard to do. So, because I keep kids overnight and on weekends. So just getting stuff done for me, it's hard.
Okay. So you've got to figure out a way to do that.
Yes.
Dion put in the chat, self-care. Jessica said doing more me stuff. All right, did everybody get a chance to share? Oh, thank you, Amy. She said she loved the blessing box idea. Okay, in the chat, I put a link to a